This segment covers miscellaneous tips and tricks you may find helpful in using Knowledge Coach. A few of these may have been covered in other segments, but we thought it would be helpful to have them all in one place. When adding multiple Knowledge Coach work papers, rather than selecting drop-downs and properties for each work paper, select multiple work papers, then edit multiple options. Here, I'm assigning multiple work papers to the same tab. I can also select the response roll forward settings for each one, as well as customizations and roll forward properties. Similarly, once I've added work papers to the binder, I can select multiple work papers, right-click, and go to Properties, and change all of the properties for the work papers. Our next tip is for spell check. To use spell check, select the word and hit F7 on the keyboard. It's important to remember that regular spell check does not work in Knowledge Coach work papers the way that it does in other Word documents. When you look at questions and also when you look at answers in Knowledge Coach work papers, these are actually coded in a database. Once I hit F7, I'll receive suggestions for the proper spelling of the word. Our next tip is for work paper navigation. Move through the binder quickly by double-clicking on the name of a work paper or from another work paper. In this example, I'll get to the acceptance and continuance form. Taking this approach is quicker than going back to my binder view and then locating that same work paper. The next tip is for table navigation. Move quickly through a table by using the Tab key rather than the mouse. You can also use the up and down arrows to move through the options available in the floaty. Our next tip relates to copying work papers. In the first year of implementation, the quickest way to add a lot of work papers to a binder that has no Knowledge Coach work papers in it is to copy from a firm's master binder and paste into your rolled forward binder that does not have Knowledge Coach work papers in it. Typically, the rolled forward binder would have the firm's recommended tab structure. Customizations, answers, and roll forward settings can all be copied and pasted. You can also copy and paste sign-offs if the firm feels that's appropriate. Our next tip is Pause KC Refresh. Pause KC Refresh is helpful when trying to navigate quickly through a work paper without waiting for it to refresh. This is especially helpful when working on a work paper that refreshes multiple times, like a disclosure checklist. I'll start by leaving Pause KC Refresh off. You can see that the work paper refreshes every time I choose Item Present. If I pause KC Refresh, I'll get a message telling me that I've paused KC Refresh. My work papers won't update immediately, but I can get through the answers much quicker with Pause KC Refresh on. Once I'm finished, I can unpause KC Refresh, and the work paper will refresh all at once. I may need to follow up with some other answers. The next tip is Save Knowledge Coach Answers. In a previous tip, we mentioned that Knowledge Coach work papers don't always work the same as standard Word documents. When you enter information into a Knowledge Coach work paper, you're actually entering information into a database. If at some point you want to save your answers directly to the database, or occasionally a work paper becomes read-only, you can use the Save Knowledge Coach Answers feature to save your answers and recover your work. To do this, go to the binder view and choose Tools, Save Knowledge Coach Answers. This will save the work papers directly to the database, even if you can't save the Word document itself. It's also a good idea to use this if you're working on a particularly lengthy checklist like the disclosure checklist.